Jason, as it is every single week, the Lee Summit Town Hall podcast is brought to the good people of Lee Summit by Budget Blinds of Lee Summit.
Budget Blinds!
Can I just say it?
You're going to say it.
I love those folks.
They are good eggs.
They are
Good eggs.
Good people that do a lot for our community. I don't know if we've mentioned this the last few weeks or not, Jason. But the wave of the future, when it comes to your blinds, your shades, all of the things in your house, do you know what it is?
Fancy colors?
No. Automation.
All hail our robot shade overlords.
That's right. Whether it's through a remote control, whether it's through Siri, Alexa, Google, whatever, voice commands, it's about automation. It's about energy efficiency. It's about safety. It's about Nick and Jason wanting to go to their homes and sit on their booties.
That's true. And I don't want anybody to watch.
Well, that's true, too.
Honestly, nobody wants anybody to watch.
Privacy is a big deal.
It's true. And we don't want to get up to close those shades. So automation is the way of the future. You can control your shades. You can time your shades. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. You should be going to Budget Blinds in downtown Lee Summit and asking them, what can I do to automate my window treatments?
So head on down to the heart of Lee Summit. Go see our friends at Budget Blinds. Tell them Jason and Nick sent you. You know what else is coming up, Jason?
I do, but I want to make you say it.
It's Chili Fest.
Chili Fest.
Look, we're like 51 days away from Chili Fest, which was gone for a year. And
Not that we're counting.
Yeah, well.
Okay, we're counting.
I put this out on the Facebook's page for Lake to Lee Summit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. We are happy to sponsor and be a part of this great community event. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of different people that come in and that are cooking and competing. You can be a taster. You can pay and come and get a spoon and taste all the food. But most importantly, Jason, you and I, we're good cooks, and we expect to be taking home some hardware.
This is absolutely true. We're going to lay down the gauntlet. We're going to whoop somebody in one of these categories.
I don't know which one.
Yeah, we're going to give a shot in all of them.
I am confident enough to say that we expect hardware. I am not so confident as to say which category that is.
We don't want to narrow our options. You got to brag broadly, set the hurdle low.
Right. Well, you just described the entire podcast.
Is there like a wooden spoon for like the last place thing? Because we may be a better bet for that than some of the others.
That's still hardware.
That's still hardware.
That's still hardware.
We're taking it home.
You know what else is cool about this event is all of the proceeds benefit Coldwater of Lee Summit. Jason, they were one of our early guests. We should probably have them on again sometime soon. But this is a great organization that helps people in our community that have some needs. It helps them meet those needs. And what a great, fun way to help out some people in our community.
Additionally, it is an absolute fantastic opportunity for you to, if you have a business and you'd like to do that, it's a great team building event, good little advertising for your business. It's an opportunity to put your logo out there and put something that's fun and community minded out in your corporate identity. So it's pretty cool. And Nick, where should I go if I want more information?
All you have to do is go to your little electronic device. Visit bridgespace.us/chilifest for more information. Join the fun, and really, you can come compete against us, but you should know we're taking home some hardware.
We're going to win. Hello again, and welcome to Lee Summit Town Hall, a weekly podcast about what you can do to make a difference. I'm Jason Norbury, and as always, I am joined by a man who is super excited for the end of the economic development border war. It's Nick Parker, the publisher of Link to Lee Summit.
Look, I'm only going to say one reason why I'm excited. We knew we were going to win anyway. So, look, Missouri's going to win.
I want to say this, is if we could do that and we could get the basketball and we can trade off, we're no longer fighting about economic development incentives and we're just going to go back to the KU and MU basketball and football games. I'd be fine with it. That seems to me a good trade for everybody.
You know what? And I feel like that was a safer thing. Like, nobody was getting hurt there.
No,
just those KU people's feelings.
We can get mad about sports instead of about money.
Wow, you just let that go.
Yeah, I know. That's all right. I'm trying to be a little bit more magnanimous in my older age and not take all the shots at the KU people all the time, especially since I work on that side of the state line now. There are a lot more of them over there than you used to think.
Protecting your own backside.
You betcha.
It's probably a good idea.
CYA. There it is. Link to Lee's Summit is the source for all the news you need about this very fine city. And our unofficial sponsor today is the number 12. Happy birthday, baby girl. Her birthday is this week.
Wow, this means you're old.
I changed our unofficial sponsor from something that was like about being old to this, trying to be positive, and you dragged me right back down to the old gutter.
You can be sweet and old.
You're the worst.
So you're both. Jason, as we dig into this show this week, first thing I want to do is I want to bring up kind of a cool event coming up this weekend. It's worth noting. Hip Hops Hooray. That's kind of fun to say anyway.
It is a little bit fun to say.
It's a benefit out at what is now called Diametric Brewery. It used to be New Axiom Brewery off 291. They are having a benefit for RettSsyndrome.org. It's from 5 to 8 on Saturday. The event will feature samples from both commercial and home brewers. So if you're a brewery fan, if you like beer.
We have been on the record in the past as to being fans of beer.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're that's right up our alley, and a kind of event we should support, and you, the public, should go there. So head over to the Diametric Brewery, which is like 291 in Columbus, and hop on in and support a good cause, and maybe get a little beer and some food.
Have some beer. Have some food. 5 to 8 on Saturday. Okay, Jason, let's kind of get into it now. First off, I think there is this is the kind of news that broke over the weekend, and I don't know. Kind of break. It
did actually break.
Yeah, but the news kind of came out with a sputter.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't sent to a lot of people. It wasn't a big announcement, but it falls right into the things that we like to talk about. It's elections. We like talking about elections.
I'm disappointed I did not receive a personal phone call with this news, but so be it.
As we get ready for this city to move into another election cycle, which comes in the spring, Councilmember Craig Faith, who represents District 2, has made it public now that he will not be seeking re-election for the city council. Jason, I'm going to tell you, as one who follows it pretty closely, this surprises me a little bit. If you will remember a few months ago, Craig Faith cast a deciding vote to approve the development plan and some incentives plan for some apartments to be built in downtown Lee's Summit. And that, look, when it came to that night, everybody knew it all came down to what side of that issue Councilmember Faith was going to be in. And when he made his decision, the way he talked, the way he worded it really sounded like that was ramping up for this is the kind of thing I can run on for re-election.
And honestly, I think if he had chosen to run, he probably would have cruised to re-election. But clearly, I think this is one of those times when the politician says, "I'd like to spend some more time with my family," he's actually telling us the truth here.
Well, look, I'm gonna say this. I don't know Councilmember Faith very well. I've worked with him on a few things. He's been liaison for the Arts Council, which I serve on. We've known each other a little bit here and there. I don't think that Craig Faith ever says much that he doesn't truly mean.
I think that's fair. So, maybe as we get closer to the end of his term, because who knows what's going to be coming in the next several months, he may have some further opportunities to take some very important stands and be deciding votes on things. But in the end, we'll see where he is, and we'll have a retrospective, I think, to look back on his time on the council, which I think has run his time while on the council. The council has run a very large gamut of behaviors, and not most of them not attributable to Craig. However, he was there for a lot of that. So there's a lot of stuff that's happened in his 3.5 years now on the council. So it'd be interesting to look back when that time comes.
And that's going to make, I think, the race. And I know, look, the filing period doesn't really open until December, so we're still really early. But it's interesting to note that kind of all these races that are going to show up. There'll be a seat open in District 1. Councilmember Rob Binney will be termed out. Hillary Shields, who has run more than once for a statewide seat and lost, has announced that she'll be running for that. District 2, Craig Faith now says he's not running for re-election.
So that makes that seat open.
And nobody has announced yet, so that is open, up for grabs. District 3, Councilmember Phyllis Edson has not announced yet whether or not she will run for re-election, and nobody else has come forward to say that they are going to challenge if she does. And then we have District 4. Councilmember Fred DeMauro has announced that he will be running for re-election, and we already have a contender in Donnie Funk who has announced that he will be running for that seat as well.
Yep. So it should be that we're already lining up. Here we are, like 8 months out from the election. We're already lining up. We have a couple of races that looks like they're gonna brew up something interesting, and we'll see where they go. But we have a little bit of time because, as you said, filing is not until December. So unless those are official announcements are made, we're gonna kind of have to hold our hats until the end of the year to really know who's there and gear up our election 2020 coverage.
And I don't want to be talking about it just because you and I love the silly season, but I think it is, you and I say over and over and over again that you have more ability to affect change here locally in your own backyard than you do anywhere else. So I think this is a place where we can look at this and say, hey, here are several open seats. Here's an opportunity for those people to get involved, to make some change, and to be a part of the growth and the development and the next evolution of this community.
Absolutely. And even if you're not going to run, just the simple act of going, knocking on 100 doors is, that's like 8% of the election.
Right.
I mean, on any given of these districts, that's a big number in any given district, where some of these are 1,500, 2,000 votes in a district. 100 people, if you knock on the door of the people in your homes association, in your neighborhood, and say, I really think you should vote for this guy or this woman or whatever the thing is, you can have a huge impact, even if you're not the one running itself. So it's a great opportunity for those sorts of things. People should be thinking about it, and we'll see how the announcements and the filings go come December.
The next thing I want to talk about, Jason, is at last night's City Council work session was a presentation, and it was a presentation for basically the final results of the Lee's Summit Ignite strategic planning work.
I'm gonna stop you for a moment, and I'm gonna give a couple of boos to. I don't like to spend time unnecessarily criticizing the mayor and those, but the Ignite puns were just. I gotta say no, Mayor. I gotta say no. Save the dad jokes for home. Leave that as the dais. I gotta put that out there.
I'm gonna say this. I understand where you're coming from, but as a man who loves the dad joke.
Oh, I love one too.
And the bad puns. Yeah, I understand. And look, I use them so often, sometimes you just can't help it.
Oh, I get it. But at this time, my official stance is boo.
Well, look, you're old. You always say boo. All right. Well, look, this was a presentation. I don't know that, Jason, there was anything really surprising that came out of this. I think it's worth noting that as is usually the case with these are all of these results and reports are very high level. It's a 30,000 foot look at things. One thing that I found, I'm not going to say surprising, but interesting, intriguing to me, was near the top of the list of responses was making affordable housing more accessible in our community. And the reason why I find that intriguing, and it's going to be interesting to watch how this report is treated moving forward, is because when affordable housing has been a topic, we haven't had the best conversations about it. It doesn't seem like it's something really our community wants, whether it's people talking about affordable housing when it comes to public hearings and public comments on things, or whether it is our elected officials and our city leaders pushing for more access and to that affordable housing. I don't know if I'm reading it the same way you are or not.
I am. I think that the interesting thing is this gives the council and the city staff an opportunity to really, I think, for our community, help define what affordable housing means for Lee's Summit. You get, I think, a lot of the pejorative stances, and they think about affordable housing as housing vouchers or being part of the housing authority, which is part of that mix, but it's not the whole thing. If you sort of pay a lot of attention to it, like I do for my job, you can see that affordable housing really, in its most technical sense, is just it's housing that the average person on the average wage in the city can afford. And that is becoming increasingly an issue, that the cost of housing is rising faster than wages are. And so a smaller and smaller proportion of our city can afford to live here. And so that's something that really does need to be attended to. So it's an opportunity for the council to sort of hit the reset button and say, okay, when we're talking about affordable housing, this is what we mean. And they can define that as they see fit. They are the elected body. But can they do that in a way that is A, useful, and B, avoids a lot of the hyperbolic language and the fear mongering that goes on when we have these conversations as a whole, because there's a lot of bits and pieces to doing that. They talked about diversifying housing choices, how they're dealing with those sorts of things. So it's a really interesting thing that, we had several projects come up that got shot down by the council in one form or another, and that would qualify under sort of the affordable housing moniker. And we'll see how the council addresses that, and if they can do a better job of setting that table and hosting that discussion over the next 10 to 20 years is the time frame for this as we go forward.
Was there anything else to you, Jason, that stood out from that report and presentation? Were there any other maybe responses of note?
I thought, there was some interesting stuff in there in the economic development. They're talking about a diversified economic base. I think a lot of times when people think about economic development work for a city, they think about the Economic Development Corporation or whatever has they're going out for large employers or manufacturing or whatever those sorts of things may be. And I think there's an acknowledgement in that about how we're going to deal with a different set. The future is going to look a little bit different. There are only so many manufacturing gigs that are even out there. More and more of them the manufacturing part isn't even being done in the United States, let alone in Lee Summit. So there's some things to be dealing with, and how we address that going forward will be interesting to me. And that was the sort of the top line. That was the number one bullet point, was dealing with economic development. So we'll see how that goes forward. The rest of them, I think a lot of that, several of them, I think down towards the bottom of their factors that they wanted to address are really sort of inside City Hall things. Mm-hmm. And aren't going to get as much public attention as those first 2 and 3, really, when you get into the cultural amenities, which I think people is saying we want to continue being the cool city with the interesting stuff to do.
Right. Well, I think the interesting thing to note, and you and I both hinted at this in these first 2 or 3 points that we've been talking about, was the thing to watch will be moving forward is to see what the city does with this report and how it shapes their plans and their conversations going forward. And it's going to be interesting to see. I'm going to circle this back to we just talked about the upcoming election. The current city council could drastically change based on the election. So it'll be interesting, again, to see how that new council body takes this report and shapes the conversations and the policies moving forward.
Absolutely. And as always, we want to make sure that you, the listener, can engage with this. So if you go to lsignite.net, the results are up there. There's all kinds of reports and links and things in there, so you can read and see what a lot of the discussion was and what these points were that were put out there. So I'd encourage everyone to do that, and then kind of lodge that in the back of your mind when you're seeing things and you're seeing the council making decisions and talking about stuff. Are they utilizing the things that they've learned from that, and are they sort of holding to the plan that they've set forth?
Okay, we're going to take a short break, Jason. We have a new sponsor we want to let people know about, and then we will be right back for the rest of this Town Hall episode. Today's episode of Lee Summit Town Hall is brought to you by First Step for Help. FirstStepForHelp.com is a place where you can go if you think you need help, or if you have someone that you're close to, a family member, a friend, you think maybe they are facing some tough times or a crisis. Go to FirstStepForHelp.com.
First Step for Help is a free service designed to meet the health of the community. It's Missouri focused, but it does include the entire Kansas City metropolitan area. As you know, that the state line is kind of a porous thing, and we get back and forth across that. It's a 24-hour mental health crisis helpline operated by ComCare. which is a not-for-profit behavioral health management organization that works in collaboration with our community behavioral health centers and other providers to continually improve access to affordable, high-quality, and effective behavioral health services.
So visit firststepforhelp.com if you or someone you're close to needs help. Jason, the last thing I want to bring up, I think, for this show this week is the council had back for a second reading, a reading for adoption, to basically this was an ordinance to vacate their rights to the property which is going to be developed, called the Grove. That's a development piece. We talked about this last week, that it kind of got slipped into the agenda for last week's council meeting at the last possible moment. The first reading was approved with virtually no discussion. There was a little bit of a note from Councilmember Rob Benny, and then it was brought back this week. And while there was a little bit more detail, a little bit more discussion for people to understand what this meant as far as the city giving up its rights, it was the same council member again who brought it up, and I was a little disappointed. I wish I'd had a little bit more.
So I did a little digging and poking and asking of questions last week after the initial thing, and I got most of what I got. And I think that, to be clear, when we were talking last week, I think we may have a little bit back and forth conflated the concept of the market value of the land and the value of the option to buy.
Right.
For $100.
That's fair.
And those are different things. Now, I think they're obviously tied together. The more the land's worth, the more the option's worth. And there's a lot of bits and pieces in there. And whether or not there would be litigation and frivolous or not, it'd be expensive and timely and all the things. And so that was out there. And so I sort of had a sort of a lawyerly economic development conversation around that with some people.
So what you're saying is it was a barn burner, exciting conversation.
Extremely exciting, I'm sure, to anyone who have been eavesdropping on us to hear that conversation. But I would say this, is that there wasn't, my complaint is the city, this may be a rational decision, all things being equal, but the council gave us no indication from any of that they were getting a decent deal. Or that they were getting a bad deal, but it was the best deal they thought they could get because they wanted the $3 million to do something.
And I think it's important to note that this gets a little more muddled because of this particular piece of property's history with the city.
Right. And so to be maximally critical, they already had one bad development deal. Instead of getting out of that development deal, they just rolled it into a second, what's turning out to be a not particularly good development deal. And now they're being bought out of the land altogether, essentially, in this process. It looks bad. Just from the outside viewpoint, a lot of this has been very opaque. It's been very, lawyerly and lots of words thrown around. And it's a really difficult thing. And I think the city, the citizens deserve a little bit more detail as to, not necessarily the ins and outs, and we don't have to besmirch the developers or do anything of that sort, but just say, these are the risks we thought we had. This is the solution that we thought was the best available to us at the time, and give that explanation out there on the public record so it could be seen.
And I think in a time where we've had lots of public discussions about the city's budget, about what money's coming in, where we're spending our money, all of that has happened very publicly. And then to take something like this, where you're talking about $3.5 million, and there's almost no explanation to the public about where that value, where it's coming into play.
Right, and that's the difference. Is we still don't know if the city is getting a good deal, a bad deal, the best available deal right now.
And we won't know that. That kind of judgment won't be able to happen for
a
while.
But we didn't even
out.
Right, but we never even had a conversation about it where we know what issues the council weighed when putting that together. And my understanding upon asking a few questions is that the council wasn't actually required to put any of that information into the public sphere. They could have just essentially all but announced that the deal was done without any conversation whatsoever, and that the first and second reading could have been done virtually in closed session. So, given that, we did get more than maybe we absolute minimum legal standard, but I still don't think it necessarily rises to the level of an explanation that gives some sort of measure of that we understand what the city was, why the city made the decision they did.
No, and I think that right there is the point of that discussion part of the process when they go through, we're talking about Robert Rules of Order right now, and that discussion process, that's the whole point, is to put those things on the record so that the public, their constituents, know the processes, know what was being considered and why a decision was made.
Absolutely. And so it's a, and there's some issues that go along with that, but I feel like the people deserve a little bit more than they got. And so kudos to the council for making this so vague and opaque.
Jason, I think that's going to wrap up our show for this week. I want to take a couple of minutes. I want to do one more tease and promotion for Friday's episode of the Lee's Summit Town Hall podcast.
Look, these are going to be some of the best episodes of the Town Hall podcast because we're not going to be on it.
Exactly. I am genuinely excited to release these next 3 Friday conversations. If you've seen any of our social media, you've heard us talk about it a little before. It's a teen takeover. 4 local teens have taken over the podcast. Like I said earlier, we're talking about mental health. They wanted to talk about issues that affect their generation. They wanted a voice. They wanted to talk to their peers, and they wanted their stories out there. So tune in, catch our episode on Friday. The first one, they will be talking about technology and the role it plays in their lives. It's an interesting one. I think you will be impressed with how this group talks and what they have to say. That will do it for this week. We will talk to everyone next time. Today's episode of the Lee's Summit Town Hall podcast is brought to you by Shred KC. I want to take a minute here I want to promote a podcast. The Shred team, they have a podcast called Shred. I know, it's a surprise.
Wow.
It's hosted by Shred owner Ryan Waters and Lee's Summit resident Aaron Simpson, who happens to own a few Anytime Fitness gyms. It's a pretty good show, Jason. They're about 35, 36 episodes in.
So they're probably hitting their stride.
They are starting to hit their stride. They offer a lot of tips and advice for people who want to change their lifestyle, to live a little healthier, whether it's you're losing weight, you want to gain strength, whatever it is. They've got some tips for you, and it's turned out really well.
So they do it in the same fashion that the fine folks at Shred we've talked about many times, and how they have handled your fitness journey as well as any others.
Yeah, it's very supportive and informative. Some of the recent episodes they've talked about explaining supplements, so that you kind of know what that game is, because there are, I don't know if you've ever walked into that section of a store or to a supplement store. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there are a lot of letters and
to
stuff.
Look at. So they've had success stories on there, some guests to talk about what they've done. We do a mailbag episode with them every once in a while where they have me on and I get to read them questions from listeners and they answer those. So it's very, very interactive. It's a good show. Catch the Shred podcast on any of your favorite podcast apps. You have been listening to Lee's Summit Town Hall, a Link to Lee's Summit podcast with hosts Nick Parker and Jason Norberry. A proud member of the Fredcast Network, you can subscribe to this podcast on most of your favorite podcast apps and catch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for all the news, analysis, and conversations on the Lee's Summit community. Connect with us on Facebook at Link to Lee's Summit or on Twitter at LS Town Hall.